Go live. Okay, well, we're live. Thank you, Zeb, for stopping by today. I think I want to start by asking you the basic questions. If you can introduce yourself, tell me, a little bit about your background and what you do.
Sure. So I'm Zeb Girouard. I work at Codecademy on the content platform team. So basically, we're responsible for all the stuff that gets submitted to Codecademy. So any quizzes, articles, lessons, things like that. So that's what I do currently. Before that, I was teaching at a bootcamp called General Assembly. I've had a couple other odd tech jobs here in the States. But before that, I was teaching English in Taiwan.
Wow. Wait, so you go from teaching English to teaching at a boot camp. Okay, that's a bit of a gap. How did that happen?
Yeah, I guess I describe it as like if you sail at all, like when you're sailing, you're supposed to tack, which means like you go kind of towards the wind to the right and then to the left and to the right and to the left. So that way you're not facing directly into the wind. So it's kind of the same thing. Like my parents were both teachers, and I was like, no, I don't want to be like my parents. Let me go get a math degree. And then I graduated in 2009, which wasn't a great time for getting jobs. So my way to find some meaningful work was to go abroad to Taiwan and teach English. And then doing that for 2.5 years, I started to miss technology. So I came back to the States and worked at a software company called NetBrain, and then another one called Imprivata. And then I was feeling the other problem, which is, well, now I miss teaching because I'm doing all this technology work. So luckily at Codecademy, those things have kind of come together.
Nice. So coding, teaching, coding. Yeah. I mean, was there any point where you thought, well, I guess it's going to end up being a college professor or something like computer science? Like, was that a point in your life where you were like, I want to teach and I like code. This seems to be the only possible way.
Yeah, I think, again, probably the main reason that didn't happen was graduating university in 2009 meant that that's what all my other friends were doing. And I was like, it seems like there is a pretty large amount of people who are going back to school and getting a second degree because the job market's still not where it should be. And I didn't want to be part of that mass of people going to get a doctorate or a law degree.
Okay. I mean, fair. I guess just sometimes, yeah, it's just, if it's not where you see yourself, then it's better not to try, I guess, to try new things. I mean, it takes some guts, to go in a different direction than everybody else. Like, you probably thinking, maybe I made a mistake. maybe this group of people had it right. And I should have,
Yeah.
It seems like it worked out.
Certainly in the beginning. Yeah, I mean, because I graduated college and I could get by with Spanish and I could speak English, or looking at places to teach English in Latin America instead, and the jobs just weren't there.
Mm-hmm.
The school year was the opposite. So I ended up going to Taiwan where I didn't speak any Chinese at all. So it's definitely a big culture shock to just get kind of thrown in there. So yeah, they're definitely in the first couple of months regretting that decision.
Okay.
It was a little bit scary, but towards the end, I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Nice. That's awesome. You did you always see yourself, once you were going to the coding down the coding path, the technologies that you use nowadays, do you started with those, or was it more of like an exploration of trying different programming languages and different fields, and then sort of like realizing which one interested you the most?
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of exploration. I think I made a lot of, I guess, mistakes in the beginning, just trying to figure it out on my own. And while I had friends who were coders, I don't know that I had a mentor. So it was just kind of like trying whatever would work. And then, I'll make a game in Python. I think one thing that I made was like a pizza falling towards a hungry character. Like, okay, cool. I guess I did that. Pizza's falling, eating. All right. Then you get 100 points and you win.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kind of pivoted towards web development for, I think, a couple of reasons. The first one is it's just so easy to see what's happening in web development. You save something, refresh the page, and oh, cool, it's blue now.
Right.
And then on
Very
top of that,
immediate.
Exactly. Whereas, if you're kind of more heavy, like Python, Java, things like this, like you can make a chess game, but it's not as obvious like how you would make those chess pieces show up. They immediately show up in web development.
Mm-hmm.
In General Assembly, I was lucky enough that General Assembly had started their new office in Denver just when I moved out there, and that's the first course they always have is the web development course. So that kind of pushed me even further in that direction.
Mm-hmm. I think that that's a very common theme with a lot of learners at Codecademy is that when they start to learn something like Python or even web development, at the beginning it's very dry. You learn HTML, you learn CSS, and it's like very vanilla. You see the big websites from big companies and all this and the social media places you are in, and they're so sophisticated. And a lot of people want to get there quickly, and it's not obvious. It's not very obvious the amount of learning you have to do or how much of it, or it can be a little bit of a hurdle for people to visualize where they're trying to go and stay with it. So that's why I was curious to know how you got into web development, because a lot of people will say, well, I started with this, I did a bit of HTML, JavaScript, but it got boring, or like, by the time I got to the React part, I was just like not interested anymore. When you were learning, did you do anything to stay motivated, like finding online communities or having many sort of like people to talk to, or were you just like self-driven? Do you have any advice on that?
I think the biggest thing that I found is trying to find the skill that you see in demand either in your workplace or in a position that you want to apply for, and something that you want to do. So if somebody's trying to get into web development and they're like, oh, well, React and Angular, those are two different frameworks, I'm not sure which one I should choose, but you're seeing a lot more job opportunities for React. Well, then you have a reason to do it, not just to grow, but also this can keep me growing. If I'm going to find a job where I can do it 40 hours a week, it'll put a little more, I don't know, jet fuel behind you, so you don't have to just be self-driven and rely on yourself. I think that's one big thing. The other big thing that when you were saying like how did I end up in web development, I think a lot of that was hackathon driven, to be honest. Just going out and meeting people and building random stuff. And that I think kind of informed, well, I want to make this fun hobby project with a couple other people. And that'll keep me going too. Another couple months working on this project that I really like. What technology do we all decide on? Oh, cool. Yeah. That's the one that I'm learning on Codecademy right now, or something like that.
That's cool. It's I think the hackathons help a lot for people that are very sort of like results oriented. And I know that you touched on how you went to web development because you can immediately see, you can refresh the page, your changes there. And I know that helps a lot of people stay motivated, is that when they build something and they see what the impact of it is. And with hackathons, that's sort of like the end point, right? Like the point of a hackathon is you build something at the end. So it really drives people to stay with it. I know that there's a bit of a drop off when people are learning, and towards the middle where maybe it gets a little more dry or a bit more theoretical in things with frameworks and things. Is there, did you find anything in particular to be challenging, or something that you said, well, I'm just going to have to remind myself why I'm here or why I'm trying to do this? Or, I mean, I don't know if there's any shortcuts in learning some of this stuff, like you just got to memorize it, I guess.
Well, I think the good thing about millennials get a bad rap, right? Because we're so dependent on technology. But that's exactly what makes someone a successful developer, is you don't need to know everything. But if you know where you're going to look to find it, then you don't need to memorize all those things. And so I think that's one thing that really helps when things are getting super dry. Like, do I really need to study this? Well, no, if I have a couple links that I can go back to, that's enough. Let's move on to the next thing. Let's move on to something that's a little more fun. I think that's a big part of it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess it's sort of like you it's okay to just be scrappy with some of what you know, if at least you know where to look for it later when you need it. It's sort of like,
Yeah.
write it as a note, like this is important, and then maybe later when you're building something you need it, and at least you know the sources of where to look and finish learning it. Or um, yeah, because I feel like sometimes when people are learning to code, they see it as a very linear path, and that might be our fault too, because of the way we present curriculum is like, here's the start line and here's the end line. But like you said, a lot of times the way that you learn things and the way you end up in places, you might be learning JavaScript, and then maybe all of a sudden you're interested in the back end and you are curious about how the back end, like you can go that way, then come back later, finish the end of the front end. So that's a really good point about not being too linear in the way that you learn things, and just kind of like go with the flow a bit. I'm curious, when you mentioned earlier the bootcamp, did you spend a lot of time trying to decide on a bootcamp? Because a lot of our learners at Codecademy, they're in that same spot. They're thinking, okay, there's like 10, 15 bootcamps in New York. Which one is the best? Which one is the one that's gonna get me a job? Did you have to spend a lot of time thinking about that?
Well, luckily for me, there were really only the two options at the time in Colorado that were hiring. There was Galvanize and General Assembly, and General Assembly was new enough that they were trying to hire really aggressively. I think as far as choosing which boot camp to go to as a student, I think I can't overstate just how important having a good instructional team is. And so often, people try to make comparisons about, oh, well, this company is better. Let's go to Flatiron School. Let's go to General Assembly. But there's so much to be said for the people that are actually delivering that curriculum. And I think what I'd recommend to everyone, it's kind of what I would recommend if you're job searching too, is to have kind of a comparison attitude. You should be looking at a few different schools, and you should be interviewing them as well as they're interviewing you. See if you like the people that are giving these courses. And usually, I know this is true for General Assembly and Galvanize, usually those teachers that are actually teaching the full-time boot camps or the part-time courses, they'll do kind of one-off either promotional lessons where they're just like, okay, let's teach you the very, very basics of HTML and JavaScript. Like, let's get a website that says hi, that sort of thing. Or they have open houses.
I've been to those here in New York. I've been to a couple of those. I found it on meetup.com. Like, I just browsing around. It's like, oh, this one bootcamp is doing some like 3-hour workshop, free workshop on a Friday. And like, I would stop by and stuff. And yeah, it's like you said, they showcase some of it, like look at our offices and look at the desk, and like, here's what you would study. And they try to really make it all like very cozy, trying to tell you, hey, next cohort is next month.
Yep. Yeah, that's the big thing I would say is look for the people. Like, does it feel good when you're being interviewed? Does it feel natural when you see one of those instructors actually teaching, and then choose that whatever feels right as far as the instructional experience you'll get.
Does it matter the background that you have? And I mean, since there's so many choices with bootcamps, especially if you're in a big city, does it matter, for example, how you choose a bootcamp depends on if you already have like these computer science college degrees that come out and they get a bootcamp to be job ready, versus someone that's totally new to tech, or someone that might have some experience with online courses. Does where you come from make an impact in the kind of bootcamp that you like? I mean, that will work for you, or is it just always comes down to the people, like you said?
I think it does, or at least there's an intent there. I know that the Galvanize approach was let's get you into a part-time course or something that's a little bit easier, so we can gauge if you're ready. If not, let's give you another part-time course, and then you'll be ready to start, as a way to try to differentiate learning levels. And I think Turing does something similar. I can't really speak to other ones because those are the only 3 that I've ever worked with, but I think that it matters. But it doesn't necessarily matter in the way that people might think. Like, I think that the most important thing is that those who have a background in something that's not necessarily development or engineering, they might have a lot of translatable skills to development. The thing that comes up for me a lot that most people might not think of is like professional weightlifters or like people who are
Okay.
personal trainers. They're remarkably, in my experience, they're remarkably adept at switching that set of skills to learning how to code 12, 13 hours a day. Because like, my thought and what some of them said to me is like, well, that's what we do. You know, we're working
Huh.
out every day, you know, several hours a day. And we know if we don't hit whatever goal we're trying to set, we need to come into the gym early tomorrow and do it again.
Hmm.
And so that I think really feeds into it well, as
Okay.
well. But yeah, I think definitely experience matters.
Mhm.
Um,
I mean,
I
I was asking because I wonder. I'm assuming that the basics of like, if you want to be a web developer, I would imagine that the curriculum in every bootcamp is like basically very similar, and the way that you might decide, like, okay, if you come from a background where you already know some tech or you're already adept at certain skills, you might be looking for a bootcamp that goes a bit more fast paced, a bit more project oriented. And like, I'm assuming that other bootcamps might cover the material over a longer period of time, or they might have more support systems in place or more peer reviews or whatever it is. I would imagine that those are all factors that play into this bootcamp is right for me or that bootcamp is right for me.
Mhm. Yeah, and so the last course I taught at General Assembly was called SEI Flex, so Software Engineering Immersive Flex. And that catered to a little bit more folks who are in development, but not quite in web development or trying to make a little bit of a career change or just polishing up skills. Um, and I and those offerings exist at other boot camps as well. So I think that's probably the big thing. Like, do you want to keep your job or at least keep a part-time role while you're going to a boot camp? And there are courses specifically for that. I don't know if it's like company specific, but there are certainly course specific things. And then my wife also taught a React specific, not really boot camp, but it was, I think, 3 days a week for 3 hours on React. So if you feel like you just need those React front end skills and you feel pretty confident in other things, there's usually an offering that will fit into that specific niche.
Okay. All right. So let's say that I chose my bootcamp. I'm going to it. It's going to be hell. It's like 10 hours a day of studying, and then I have to do homework for the next day. It's going, it's all kinds of crazy. Um, Once you get towards the end of the bootcamp and you're starting to think, okay, I got like 2 weeks left. I should be thinking about what I'm going to do with this, how I'm going to apply, what I'm going to do. How do you leverage what you've learned in a bootcamp, or like how do you play it to the best, in the best light, so that you do get to the point where you land a job or something? Like how do you use bootcamps and what you've learned to make that jump? Is there like a trick to it, or it's just luck?
There's a few things that I've seen that work really well. I think a lot of it is luck. A lot of it is luck and volume. You know, the biggest thing is, like I said before, applying to a bunch of places. And often, so the first thing is try not to apply to your dream job first, because you're unlikely to get that job right away. You've got to go in an interview, make sure your portfolio is polished. So it's not necessarily the most ethical thing, I guess, but like to go after a job that you're like, if I get it, I get it. If I don't, I don't. Do
Mhm.
that first so you can kind of shake out those nerves. I think that's a big thing. Another big thing that I've seen people do, which is really cool, is actually work for that company. Like their final project is a proof of concept, which is basically a long form interview for the company they want to work for. Like, we have this
Oh,
problem. We can't organize the lawn equipment for our landscaping company, and we want a website developer, but we need to prove to the CEO that it's worth hiring a specific web developer for this problem, whatever. So there've been a couple of things like that where somebody's final project was actually just piecing together in a week something that might work for another company. And both times that I saw it, they got that job.
okay.
So I think that's a big thing. And the other thing is just like lining up, kind of like I mentioned before, what skills are you seeing in these jobs, / what skills do you want to investigate, and make your portfolio about that.
Okay.
Just at a certain point, it starts to make sense. You keep seeing the same words over and over again. Well, that's probably the technologies you should use with your projects. And then like, what kind of fun things do you want to build? oh, okay, well, it looks like these companies also build those similar things. Those are the companies that I'll spend all my energy on. So just lining up whatever you see similarity in your personality and what you want to develop with what jobs are out there.
Okay, so don't apply for your dream job first. Be realistic. Also, build projects that are useful for the companies you're applying for. Try to build something that seems to be useful for their tech stack, I guess, or what they're doing. And then the third one is to just be, I think your volume you mentioned. It's applying for a lot of places.
Definitely that.
and also just trying to, so it's volume, but like you said, it's catering to every, so even if you apply to 200 companies, every time you apply for one, you have to look at what they're looking for and what the keywords are and try to cater for that specific one, even if you have to do it 200 different times, right? Like don't just make one resume, copy and paste, send it around. That's not going to be as efficient or like as useful, I guess. Have you seen anything in your experience? Have you seen any bootcamp graduates, or do you know any bootcamp graduates that have this sort of like imposter syndrome where they will go to a job and they will say, well, like compared to the workforce, it's kind of like there's these college graduates with computer science degrees and they know their stuff, their master degrees, whatever. And like all I did was a few weeks of coding, like, like the imposter syndrome is very real for a lot of people to get into tech, especially for junior roles. So is that something that you see often, and like something that maybe any ways that people can sort of like fight back that feeling that they don't belong or like they haven't done enough to get these jobs?
Yeah, it's rampant, and I think the other thing is I suffer from it too. As the instructor in front of 15 to 20 students who are trying to learn development, I'm supposedly the expert, but I can't know everything. I think there's a website, I can't remember the name of it, but it's like, am I a developer.net or something? Am I a real developer? And there's like 5 questions on it, and it's like, do you make web pages? Or like, do you code on a daily basis? Are you a chemical that converts photographs into finished images? Like, if you answered yes to any of those questions, then you are a developer. And I think that's the big thing is focusing on what you've done, as opposed to what you haven't done or what you think people are expecting you to have done. Those who focus on, well, there's 4 projects in the General Assembly curriculum. Most boot camps are similar. You've got a few projects and you polish those up and then you display them for potential employers. And I think that's the biggest thing, is to focus on what you've done, what you're proud of, and then keep doing more.
Okay.
There's no ideal, like, oh, this is the perfect developer. Especially in interviews, what people are looking for is like, oh, well, can you make productive code? And if you have made productive code, that's the best indicator that you will keep doing that.
I know that talking to other guests that we've had, they also mentioned that your first job can be a critical piece to fighting this imposter syndrome, where if you land at a company where your mentor, your manager, your lead, your team lead, whoever it is, they understand that you're a junior developer, you got started, like they understand that there's limits to what people know, and they kind of like take you under the wings and give you the space to grow and to feel confident and to feel like the skills that you know, and you really feel it. They mentioned that that's also kind of like very important, that sometimes people will have bad experiences where they're so desperate to land a job anywhere that they will just pick whoever calls back, and then they end up being in places where maybe they feel like they're inadequate or they didn't know enough, or there wasn't that spirit of mentorship where you're just like, okay, it's okay, just got here, give yourself some time. Like, so do you think that when you're applying for jobs, it's also important to sort of just like you said about applying for boot camps, you have to find the right one. I would imagine that for jobs, you also have to sort of fight your instinct of just taking anything. You're desperate for finding a job and just try to be a bit more picky where you go.
Yeah, my co-instructor had a really good exercise that we would do towards the end of a boot camp. And they were all vaguely based on mostly his experiences. He said some very, very interesting experiences, and some of mine. But like, this is a job, you've got very little information coming through an interview. And he described it as like playing a slot machine. And so like, okay, you got these things coming up and like, the cherry comes in and a cherry, oh, orange, crap, that's not what I was looking for. And I think that's true with any job interview. You're like, oh, okay, well, it pays $100,000 a year. That's really great. That's what I'm looking for. It sounds like they're using React. It's a good framework. I really want to learn that. And if I go there, I'm the only person coming into the office and there's nobody else there. That really sucks. So like that's the
Okay.
like the bomb or whatever came down
Yeah.
on the slot machine. And so just kind of addressing those jobs where you go in and do you care about money? Do you care about being in a culture that feels welcoming? I always define what I call a BS matrix. Like, what's the BS that you're willing to deal with, and that you're not. And so if it's something that you don't care about, well, then you don't care about it. It's
Right.
whatever. Like, if you're willing to work for $25,000 a year and you're saving the world, then do that. Definitely do that.
Hmm.
If on the other hand, you really want the money, but you don't really care about a congenial atmosphere and you kind of want to do things on your own, then go in that way. And so just kind of listing out those pros and cons, I think is a really, really big thing. Just get your head around like, what is the job I'm looking for? But if you're coming out of a boot camp, I think like learning has to be in the top three in that list. And money's great, but if you don't have that ability to grow, working with somebody who actually cares about your development as a developer, I think that's the most important thing is just finding somebody who can sponsor that growth, and the rest of it is kind of secondary, because once you have that first job, the gates just open up. So many other people will be looking
Right.
to hire you. So if it's not the perfect job, but it was a great learning experience for a couple of years, then you're basically done. Your
Okay.
career from now is wherever you want it to go.
And do you have any specific advice for when junior developers might find themselves in situations where they are trying to buy more than they can chew, sort of, so to speak, where maybe you're very eager and you come in and say, well, can you take care of this? Can you take care of that? And you might end up in places where it's a Friday night and you're working. You wake up Saturday, you keep working because you feel like, it's all great. It's awesome. I love my job. I keep doing it. Like Sundays, afternoons, after work, after lunch, you're working, and you don't realize that you're burning yourself out until like 8 months later, you hate your job and you think that development actually isn't what you thought it was. Do you have any advice for junior roles where sometimes eagerness gets the best of you, or like the excitement that, okay, you made it, you went through the boot camp, you learned and actually worked, your resume got through, you got a job and you like it. How do you sort of like rein in that enthusiasm and sort of like keep it in check so that it works more long term?
So I ran cross country and track in high school, and what I say, like, if you're starting a new job, you don't want to run your fastest right away, because then you set that expectation. So same thing in cross country. If you're running a 5K race and you give it your all on the first day, well, that's going to be your PR, and you're going to have to keep improving every time from that. Oh my God, I was going so hard. That'll lead to burnout for sure. If you show up and your first day of work, you're already working 12 hours, and then you continue that through, well, there's only down from there.
Right.
You're not going to start working 13, 14, 15. Well, now you're not sleeping. That's not healthy. So I think it's probably, if you are working really, really hard, sometimes just kind of hide that, or to
Okay.
compartmentalize. My first couple of jobs, I would stay after, late at work until 7 or 8, but those last 2 or 3 hours of the day were me going through tutorials and learning new things. So that's not going to it's not going to affect my velocity when I check in with my team saying, oh, I got 3 bugs fixed today, and I got 1 bug fixed today, and they're like, what happened to the 3 bugs fixed?
Hmm.
Keep doing that same amount of work to make sure that the company is staying afloat and you're making good code. But you can buffer that if you really do want to go crazy, grow with that craziness. Especially if you're younger. I know this has changed for me, certainly now that I'm in my 30s. Like, I
Hmm.
don't really want to work 12-hour days anymore, and I know that they're not really fulfilling, but they used to be. Like, I did actually
Yeah.
really enjoy those 3 hours of tutorials, and like, oh cool, now I can make the racer go this way on my new web page. This is really exciting. And
Mm.
then you get up and you do it again the next day, and it's fine. So again, if if that's the BS that somebody can tolerate, if they can work 12, 13-hour days, I think it's just like, don't go super fast off the gate. Don't go super fast right away. And if you are spending extra time, make sure it's also fulfilling for you. I guess those are the two big things.
Hey, that's fair. Yeah, I like it. I'm going to take that advice too. Thanks so much. Before we jump into the Q&A with the audience, do you have any parting thoughts or any general advice that you wanted to share about learning, self-teaching yourself code, going to boot camps, landing jobs at the boot camps?
Yeah, I think I have this pet peeve, and it started as a math major, and then I started substitute teaching, and just hearing over and over again, like, I can't do math, or I'm so bad at math. And when you're talking to an 8-year-old and that's what they say, like, oh, I'm so bad at math. I'm like, you don't even know what math is yet. Like, you haven't started learning calculus and physics and chemistry, all these other things that you could do with math, but you've given up here before you even gotten started. I think the big thing that I would stress towards people who are trying to do a career change or trying to get into a new field is, like, there's no such thing as can't, but there is such a thing as, like, oh, I have these skills and they're much easier for me than somebody else maybe. And so to lean on those skills without that idea of, like, oh, I can't do this thing, it might be harder. Ask yourself the question, well, how much time will it take to get to the level that you want to be, rather than, like, oh, is this the right field for me? It's never that black and white. But I think that's the big thing, is focusing on everything is possible, but is it going to take 4 years for you to get to where you want to go? So listen to whatever fate has placed in your way, whatever jobs have been placed in your way. Like, oh, well, this is feeling smoother, but never accept that idea that, like, can't is a thing. You can always do something if you want to.
I think I heard somebody say, we're all different and we learn at different rates. And oftentimes what happens with the standardized education system that we have, where classrooms are, 50 minutes for everybody, and the book is the same thickness for everybody, and the exams are the same for everybody. It's like it ignores that part that everybody's a little different the way that they learn abstract concepts. And you end up, if you don't fit that shoe, basically you might be bad at math, but really what happens is that you needed like a couple of extra exercises to practice with before it clicked. Maybe what you needed is like 3 more examples. Maybe you just needed 2 more hours of reading the material, but you just weren't given that choice because there's like this standard one size fits all. And if you are unlucky not to fit within that range, then you go around saying, well, math is not for me. So I know that exactly. I've heard in the past that will say, yeah, if you need to read it 2 times instead of 1 time, well, yeah, sucks. People that read it once and stay with it, yeah, they got it and they walk away. But you can read it twice. It's going to take some more time, but you can get there too. So I know that's a big one for learners at Codecademy. It's like, do I need math to code? It's like, yes and no, but don't worry about it because you can learn it. Like, even if you don't, like, if your question is not, do I need math? The question is, can I learn the math I need? And yes, you can.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Okay. Awesome. So I don't know if we have any questions from the audience. Let me check in the chat. Someone asked at the very towards the beginning, they said, oh, they were asking about learning Python. Yeah, there's a lot of resources online. Learning Python, Codecademy is one, and there's many, many others. Do you have, Zeb, do you have any like favorite resources online for practicing Python, for example? Is there any, I know, like Kaggle, for example, for data sets and stuff. What do you do if you want to practice Python?
Yeah, I guess it's been a while. I think the last time I was doing it, I was probably doing it on Codecademy. And there are definitely other tutorials out there. I think the biggest thing is, like, if you want to focus on data, probably want to go towards something that'll teach you pandas or some other like data visualization library. I think that's the only kind of recommendation I have. And then just the general recommendation, which is do something that would be fun for you. So if you're looking to make a game with Python, you'll find a tutorial that does that. If you're looking for like more functional programming paradigms or whatever, you'll find a course that'll teach you that. Python's it's a language, it's a way to code, but the question is really, what do you want to do with it? And I think a lot of people forget that when they're looking for a class or tutorial.
Nice. All right. So be kind of like project oriented with it. Sort of like you learn English now. What novel are you going to write, right? Like
Yeah.
you know the language. What's the book you're going to write? What is the essay? Yeah, you know the words. Now put them together. I guess sort of situation. Well, I realized that we went a little over time. So thank you so much for your time. I think you had awesome advice today, and I'm sure that a lot of people are learning a lot from your advice. Uh, I'll love to have you back in the future if you want to. I know that
Yeah,
you're going to
sure.
be around. So thank you so much. And I'll see you all in our next episode of Live Conversations.
Thanks, Fede.
No problem. And that's it.